Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition and the actual game and the intended game. We have arrived here. We have fully arrived here. Okay, so let's get it popping. All right. Boy, there is so much changing so fast in D&D right now. Von Richten Guide to Ravenloft. I'll tell you, man, every new book brings real friction for Dungeons & Dragons. So here's the big talk right now with Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Alignment is out. So Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, this is my understanding. Please correct me if any of this is wrong. This is everything I've heard so far. So Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, not a single NPC in Von Richten's Guide has any alignment attached to them, and that is a first. There has never been a Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition book to this point that did not specifically attach alignments to the NPCs, to NPCs within the book, or talk about alignment directly. This is the first time this has ever happened in any Dungeons & Dragons source book, and many D&D commentators, including myself, are now reading this, and maybe I shouldn't say many, a significant number of D&D commentators are recognizing this as a desire to remove alignment from the game. Interesting. Okay. Now, where we've arrived, though, I don't think this is any debatable anymore, right? Where we've arrived is we have the actual game and we have the intended game. So, what is the intended game? The intended game is a super woke Dungeons and Dragons. That's what Wizards of the Coast, right? And here's the thing. Tell me. I invite correction on this, but let's walk it through. It is my opinion that it is this way right now, and it will increasingly become true that Wizards of the Coast, that Dungeons & Dragons design team is almost exclusively coastal elites. There you go, right? So basically, it's people who live on the coasts, and when you say coastal elite, what does that mean? It means you have a very high-end education, right? And you sign on to a woke playbook, right? And I think, yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Like, and basically, like, from those two things, like, there's a million questions you can answer. Like, here's a good one, right? Is there anyone who isn't an environmentalist on the, a staunch environmentalist who's doing, like, really good recycling, right? And considering going vegan on the design team? Almost certainly not. Everybody there is going to be environmentalist. You could ask 10 questions, right, from the woke playbook, and you already know their answer, right? It's just straight down the line, right? So with that said, they want race out of the game, period, right? I get it. It's gotten them into a lot of trouble in the past. And I totally agree that Dungeons & Dragons could have done a better job of dealing with race in the past. But one of the things it looks like is whenever there's a problem, they just want to cut it out of the game rather than fixing the problem. They just want to, just core it out, burn it to the root, done, right? And I'm not sure you can do that with race in Dungeons & Dragons because it's just such a load-bearing wall. I'm not sure Dungeons & Dragons is Dungeons & Dragons without humans, dwarves, and elves, right? Alignment, a load-bearing wall. Right? Rogue, fighter, wizard, cleric. It's a load-bearing wall. You can't take it out, right? And so here's the issue. Is Dungeons & Dragons its own independent thing, or is it rooted in Gary Gygax? And if you take Gary Gygax's ideas out of the game, is it still D&D, right? That's a big question right now. The other thing is, if you take Gary Gygax out of the game, do you get your face stomped into the dirt by Paizo or a Paizo-like company? Because that's what happened before, right? They tried to turn it into a video game, and people were like, hard reject, we will give our money elsewhere, right? And I think Wizard Coast realized this, so they have the intended game. What is the intended game? Race is no longer in the game at all. I think that's intended by the design team. Alignment is no longer in the game. Paladins are no longer in the game. Clerics are no longer in the game. And by the way, every single principle, every single virtue or value of the Wizards Coast design team is fully synonymous with Hollywood values. You could say anything that's going to come from, in my opinion, from a Wizards of the Coast designer, you could also get from a Hollywood director, a Hollywood A-list actor, a Hollywood, it's just it's how it rolls now, right? And so that's their intended game. But what's the actual game? The actual game is every single day somebody buys a PHP, an MM, and a DMG. There's race, there's clerics, there's paladins, there's alignment, right? So there is their intended game, which they're desperately trying to write into existence through the source books, but the PHPs are non-touched, right? They are still carrying race, paladin, cleric, alignment, right? That's the reality of the game. That's the actual game, not the intended game. So we live in a world of two D&Ds now: the intended game and the actual game. It's a very, very interesting dichotomy, and I think it's just important to acknowledge where we are now, right? We know what the stakes are. We know where the Wizards of the Coast design team is trying to go, right? We have a lot of clues. We don't know all of it, right? I think it's a terrible, terrible, terrible idea to remove alignment from the game. Absolutely horrendous, right? And here's why, okay? Because you're following your followers. That's the issue, right? Like, having a non-alignment game, yeah, you're right. The vast majority of tabletop role-playing games today have abandoned alignment. Well, they can. They're not founded by the greatest tabletop role player, the greatest tabletop role playing game designer, the greatest tabletop role playing game creator that ever lived. Gary Gygax. D&D is. That's why you can't break away. So I think the game's got to remain the game. I think Wizards of the Coast got a lot of questions to ask. I'm rooting for them, right? And here's the thing: you hear me going, "Oh, coastal elites." Guess what? I got 2 degrees. I live on the East Coast. And I voted Democrat for the last 12 years, 16. I've voted Democrat for the last 16 years. So when I use the term coastal elite, pot, this is kettle, right? It's so yeah, that's where we're at. All that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear your take. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.